Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of Avenue A, where we talk acting, we talk networking, and we talk the industry. I'm your host, Kelsey Bentz, and for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, welcome. Super happy to have you here. Avenue A is a platform that I started shortly after graduating from art school into this lovely pandemic that we are all living through at the moment. And I was trying to figure out ways to stay connected with my colleagues, my friends, my artistic comrades, if you will. And it felt quite daunting. So I created this platform, Avenue A, to virtually connect live with different artistic guests every week and pick their brains about their experience in the acting industry and the arts industries as a whole. So we've had almost 30 episodes so far, and I'm super excited to be here again with you all. So welcome back if you're a returning viewer, and welcome for the first time if you are not. All right, let's just get into it. We have a really exciting guest today. This guest and I go way back. I think it's like maybe 5 or 6 years that I've known him, which is special. I'm going to introduce him, and then we'll bring him on and have an awesome chat. So my guest tonight is Jonathan Quisenberry, and Jonathan is a music director, keyboardist, composer, arranger, sometimes actor, vocal coach, and Magna Doodle artist located in Los Angeles. He's currently serving as the music director for Rock of Ages Hollywood, which is an immersive theatrical reimagining of the hit musical from the original Broadway team. In addition to numerous music directing credits, which is where John and I first met, he music directed one of the shows that I was a part of in Portland, Oregon. Side note. He is also partly responsible for the award-losing off-Broadway flop, Matthew McConaughey versus the Devil, for which he proudly served as the composer, co-lyricist, and music supervisor. So all that being said, I'm super excited to invite Jonathan on the show tonight. Hello.
Hi, Kelsey. I'm your exciting guest this week.
You are my exciting guest this week, and I am very excited to talk with you, not only because you have a breadth of knowledge and experience to talk about, but also just because you're a dear friend of mine, and I feel like we've known each other since we were both in very different phases of life.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's special.
When's the first time? Because I don't know if the first time we worked together, I was music directing. What was our first show together?
You're right.
I think we were acting in How to Succeed. Was that it?
It was How to Succeed.
How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. You and me. Wow.
You and me.
We were very different.
We were quite different. But I'm excited that we're both in each other's lives still. That's very meaningful to me. And I'm honored that you would join me on the show.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for asking me. I've been watching you do this for a while, and I've been looking at the calendar. I'm like, I can't believe she hasn't asked me yet. I'm interesting. I'm doing exciting things. But
well, you finally get your chance.
Good.
Okay. So like we sort of talked about, we've known each other for a while. You now live in LA. I'm now in New York City, but we met in Portland doing Portland theater. which is why it's so fantastic that we have this virtual platform that we can still connect on.
Oh, yeah.
So just to start off with, can you tell me a little bit about your transition from Portland theater to Los Angeles theater, what that was like for you, and why you even felt inspired to make that move?
Yeah, for sure. It wasn't just a jump from Portland to LA. I always kind of had in the back of my mind that, unless I got like a really cool gig in Portland doing something consistent, I always thought that it would be, I'd be moving to like New York or something like that. I'd keep doing theater. When you think of theater, you don't think of Los Angeles.
Right.
But in between, I spent a little bit of time in New York when myself, Carrie Morgan, and Emily Landman were producing our show that you mentioned, our award-losing show, Matthew McConaughey versus the Devil.
Yes.
And that was an exciting time. That was like back in 2017. And it was there when I got an opportunity to audition for a cruise line. Which is something that I had not considered doing. I knew that was like a job that you could work as a musician. You go work on a ship for some amount of time. But the music director for my show had done it. She had music directed. She was the first female music director for Rock of Ages, and they were doing it on with Norwegian Cruise Line. And I got an opportunity to audition. She hooked me up with the manager. She said, I'm not going to be doing it again, but I can refer you. And I just, I'm always a person that says like, sure, let's, I'll audition. We'll see what happens. I can weigh my options. But I auditioned. They offered me that contract, and that was like a really tough decision because it was a 9-month contract. I'd spent years in Portland, like working on music directing skills and building my connections there, and becoming somewhat established and getting consistent work. And I really loved it. I love the community. I still do.
Yeah.
So it was like a really tough decision to leave like my connections there to take myself out of that community, with which I was like really comfortable, let alone like my friends and like this job that I had at a church that I loved, that we also have some connection with that church, and leave that and like try to reconnect after like 9 months being away made me really nervous. But I just felt like it was too good of an opportunity to like say no to, because like you hop on a ship and you sail around the Caribbean and do the same kind of couple shows. It just seemed like, even though it was like really nerve-wracking, like let's do it, let's try it. That's like the beginning stages of when I personally was going through a transformation, a mental transformation, a physical transformation, all kinds of stuff. And I said, I'm going to say yes to this. I'm going to go and do it. So I did that 9-month contract with Rock of Ages. I got to know the show doing it like 5 times a week for 9 months. I got to know it very well.
I bet you did. Yes.
I never got bored of it. It was always, it was so fun to do, because, Rock of Ages is different. It's not like you're sitting in a pit, like in your blacks, your black shirt and your pants and like just sweating with a bunch of musicians. I was like, I'm in it. Like we're Arsenal, the band itself, which on the ship we had 4 people in the band. I was a music director behind the keyboard. Like I had a costume. They put me in this big, like 80s hair, like made me really sweaty, but a big wig. And like, we were like, some of us had lines and we jammed out on stage, and the audience really loved it. Audiences loved that show. So I never got bored of it. So I got an offer after I came back in just like a few months. They're like, come back and do another contract, and it's good money. I loved traveling. It's a good temporary gig for me, being on a ship, because you have to sacrifice so much. You want to,
yes, you do,
all kinds of normalcy when you hop on a ship. So I did a second contract, and during that second contract, so what we have is a music supervisor. When you rehearse on land and they install the show on the ship. And I had a music supervisor. He's the guy that's like onshore side in Florida. My music supervisor was the one like above me, who first contract just kind of got me up to speed of how to do the show when I had to do it. But he was kind of like the big music director, teaching all the notes and like making the creative decisions. And I was just there to keep it afloat. The next time when I came back, he's like, hey, I'm kind of double booked right now. I'm going to go and I'm going to work on this other thing at the same time. You did a great job last time. Will you just kind of take the reins on this one in Florida? And I'm like, sure. I always, you always say yes. And so I did. And I had like a lot of creative input, and it turned out really well. And the producers for the show, Rock of Ages, the original show that started here in LA, eventually went to Broadway. I got to know them and meet them a bit. And the music supervisor, his name is Steve Landau, he said that, he said, you did a great job. And the producers for Rock of Ages are planning to open an immersive version of the show in Hollywood. And they're assembling their team. He said, you'd be a great fit for it. And he recommended me, which that went a long way because he has a great relationship with them. And so so I was like in their ear from that, and from the ship I would pester the producers a lot. They would come visit to kind of check out the show for like a week during the contract, and I just made sure that I got like lunch or something. I need to sit down and have some coffee with the producers and just like lay it out. I'm like, I really want to do this. I think I'd be good for it, and kind of make my case and just connect with them. And I got, like just like 2 months before rehearsals started, I got the offer to do it. So I hopped off the ship. I packed up my bags and moved to LA. And so it all happened pretty organically. I didn't have Los Angeles in my mind, but I just kind of kept saying yes to opportunities, and it led me here to Los Angeles with like the coolest gig I've ever had.
Wow. What an adventure that is. And thanks for sort of taking us through, because that's like really awesome to hear how you navigated all of those opportunities, and how if you had given another answer or been more hesitant or not embraced the say yes attitude, you wouldn't be where you are right now.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, always say yes. Because even if you feel like you're not ready for it, when you're in there, you rise to the challenge. You do your best, and you be an easy person to work with. Any kind of like skill deficiencies you feel like you might have will be forgiven if you're like a nice person to work with, if you're a good collaborator, especially in theater.
Yes, that definitely rings true to me. Yeah. And a lot of what you're talking about leads into my next question, which is a big aspect of this platform, this show Avenue A. It's exploring the concept of networking, specifically like in terms of the artistic and acting industries. And how networking affects our careers, right? Because it is so much about quote unquote who you know. I wanted to ask you, what does networking mean to you? And has your perspective on networking changed over the years? And if so, how?
Networking, it hasn't changed much.
Okay.
How I, like over 10 years, how I even got started in Portland musical theater music directing was going to shows, seeing because I wanted to music direct, I wanted to at least try it, seeing who music directed it and reach out to them. At the time, I had graduated college. I had like a part-time job, and I'm like, I have time that I can offer to somebody. So like I contacted Alan Lytle. He was music directing Annie Get Your Gun at Lakewood at the time. And I reached out and I said, hey, if you need a music assistant, I will offer my time. I'll show up. I just wanted to learn from him, get some insight. And at the same time, if he wanted to throw any work to me, or if people needed to, run through a song, they could throw me into like a different room with them, and we could just offer my assistance. And and it didn't feel like working for free, because I was learning a great deal, and also I offered to do that. And I think that's important for a lot of people who want to network. You don't wait for someone to offer an internship. You try to grab those opportunities. People typically, they see it as it's kind of flattering if you you say like, hey, you did a great job, you're doing what I want to do, and you show humility, and you're like, I want to know more. And typically they'll say yes. They'll always meet you for coffee. They'll answer some questions, and if you show that tenacity, people will meet you where it is, where you are. And so that's always been that applied to demanding getting coffee with the producers Rock of Ages, and like making my case, and being trying my best to be affable and genuine. That's another important thing that speaks to the people that I surround myself with. They're very genuine. It's not like I don't know, sometimes even like after a Rock of Ages show, we share like AMDA Los Angeles is just like right behind us, the building. So we'd get lots of like AMDA kids coming through and like, trying the networking thing with me. And I'm like, oh, you're so full of shit. But like it's, but some of them are just like really cool. You can tell the difference if like people that are genuinely interested in what you're doing, or people that like, hey, if I audition, you'll recognize my face. I don't know.
Yes.
You just want to be genuine.
That's the thing that I always, because I know exactly what you're talking about. And that's what I want to unpack, I think, because it's so cringy. So how do you, I mean, maybe it's simpler than I'm making it, but how do you like walk the line of being forward, right? And like asserting yourself and sort of putting yourself out there, but like not coming off as that, I think that's one of my worst fears.
Yeah, it's you're not selling yourself. I don't want to go and sell myself. When I say I make my case, to someone saying like why I'd be a good choice, a reliable choice. I'm not like, I'm summarizing what I'm interested in, and I'm connecting that with like a familiarity with their work and a respect for their work. So I don't know, like if you're just genuine, if you show up and you want to talk to someone, you got to know what they do. One, you have to understand their work, and that shows like you put a little bit of work into understanding them. And so that way it's not one-sided. It's not all about, an actor or like someone who wants to be good at networking coming up and be like, here's my card, here's what I do.
Right.
It's about like, explain yourself, be able to like succinctly say like what you're interested in, and also like that connection about like, here's how I understand what you do and your work and why I'm interested in it. And so that's a little bit more genuine. You make a connection rather than, otherwise just hand them your card and move on with it. But if you're full of crap and you talk, and sometimes that works for people, but you end up like with a group of people that are just full of it. And I'd rather be with people that are like good collaborators and are vulnerable and open, and you can feel like comfortable. I know that's the team. That's certainly the team at Rock of Ages. I feel really lucky to be part of the Rock of Ages family.
That's lovely to hear. And that's all. I mean, I've had several experiences of that where it's just this lovely atmosphere where everyone's genuine. And I think a lot of artists and actors are at heart, but I do think sometimes with this scary concept of networking, it can people get ahead of themselves, and I don't know, it is an overwhelming sort of concept sometimes to unpack like what networking is and how
networking it has kind of an aggressive connotation to it. It doesn't have to be uncomfortable, When I reach out to people, I reached out to someone. I'm like a huge Randy Newman fan. I love his music, and I've had Randy Newman songbooks since college, and the guy who does all of the arrangements, like the piano arrangements and music directs any of Randy Newman's stage shows, he lives in LA, and I just sent him an email. I'm like, hey, I've been reading from these books for like over a decade. I love what you're doing. And he was they were planning on doing one of Randy Newman's stage shows here in Los Angeles, and I just I sent an email, and I'm like, if you want to meet for coffee or something like that, let's, I'd be honored. And like, that's me, I think he responded, and he met with me because he could see that I put work into knowing what he's doing, you know, rather than knowing his title and like I want something specific from him. It's just like, hey, I'm genuinely interested in you, and we're in the same city. So it's stuff like that. It's a two-way thing. So networking can be, I don't know. It's not like you don't have to feel uncomfortable going. You know, it's an opportunity. It's a big opportunity.
An opportunity for collaboration, I think.
For collaboration, that's
rather
a
than
distinction.
like what someone can give you or what they can do for you, right?
Exactly.
I think that's an important distinction.
100%.
Yeah. So going off of that, I have to bring it into the room that we're all artists in this pandemic, right? Like, I know we've been talking about this since literally it happened, but it's still relevant and we're still trudging through. And I think a lot of us, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I have been struggling as of late to like continue to find creative motivation and sort of like struggle through what to create during this time when like what I want to be creating isn't really as possible. So I'm wondering how you've been dealing with this, first of all, and then also, do you have any tips for young artists who are trying to stay creative during this time?
Yeah, motivation, and we feel like we have a responsibility as artists to be creative. Myself, when I'm working on shows, and I was lucky enough to be part of Rock of Ages is obviously doing it right now. We plan to reopen. But it was really easy. It felt like going to work, right? And I knew my creative input was like on a schedule. I would show up and, you know, I would do some rehearsals or I would perform a show, and I felt satisfied and I was doing it. And when I didn't have that sort of consistency and that deadline, I felt really anxious and depressed that I wasn't able to be creative. So I would, you know, I handled it poorly at first, and still it's still a journey that I would shame myself into being creative. You know, does that make sense at all? Like, it's just like, well, get off your ass and write a song, do something. And part of that is true, but it kind of found that after a few months of like being like that, I found that like it wasn't, even if I was creating and forcing myself to like sit at a keyboard and come up with stuff, it wasn't coming organically from me. I had to assess. I had to just get to know myself better. So I went to therapy. I started therapy like a lot of people did during the pandemic, you know, being stripped of everything that we were really comfortable with and kind of kept us afloat. It was a lot to handle. So that was really helpful in just getting to understand myself better.
Just on a personal level, right?
Yeah. And this is a great time to do that. So like, instead of like shaming myself into like writing music or to make some post on Instagram so that like, you know, I'm seen by people, I started to just find different modes of creativity that would make me feel like I'm sharing my artistic voice. You mentioned Magna Doodle Art. That's something that I started just recently. I started like engaging in visual arts. I started taking like different, I don't know, I'm very like laser focused on whatever I'm doing. But it was nice to just kind of get rid of that and like explore other things. I went to school for massage. Is amazing. Thank you so much. Oh, I did.
Yeah, can you show us? I was just gonna say.
I just did this. So I do it because I'm stressed out, and I was so stressed out for doing this interview. This is the sort of thing that makes me want to vomit. I've been thinking about for a week. But like when I'm stressed out, I'm like, I'll sit down and I'll do some. This is me, like real quick, like a 10-minute sketch of Kelsey. You see that?
Excuse me? What? Is that of me?
Yeah, that's supposed to be you. It's hard to do it on a Mac. But yeah, this helped. Like, well, that's the thing. Like, I use this to make myself it like helped calm me, center me. I was creative, and I'll send you a pic of this.
I'm
But
so excited about
it
that.
felt nice to do that. You know, I put my
Yeah.
creativity, since we're limited right now. I'm writing a show with Don Horn, your guest from last week. Writing a
Get out.
show. Writing a show. So it's just kind of bouncing between different things and flexing different creative muscles, and I don't know. You just do your best and explore different things. Visual arts. Get to know yourself better. I've been doing way more yoga. It's just take care of yourself. That's the biggest thing. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to be creative. Just just engage in art, and then that's like the best stuff you can do. And theater it'll come back.
I really resonate with what you were saying about sort of purposefully straying away from like a one-track mind. I think it's really easy as artists in specific fields to be like, well, this is what I do, and this is what I focus all my energy on succeeding in, right? This is what I'm good at. And I know that I had that moment too, multiple moments during the pandemic where I was like, well, I can't be on stage. So I have to, create in different ways and like learn different mediums and stretch and flex some of those other artistic muscles that I had not necessarily ignored before, but just like hadn't pursued. And so there is a lot of beauty in that.
It connects you with yourself and others, 100%. And find something. I'm not saying like when I say find something new, because that's something a lot of artists have heard, especially theater artists. And I can't do theater, and they're like, find something new. It doesn't mean find a new job.
Right.
It's just like truly do explore. It's a time for you now that you have to take a break.
Yeah.
Maybe explore something else, and at least to get you through until it's feasible for theater to start up again.
Yeah. So on that note, what do you see as the future of live theater? I know
Great
that's like
question.
a gigantic question.
Well, I don't know. Well, looking at how theater has responded and tried to stay relevant this last year, it's done what it could, but like most of what I've seen since live performance with an audience isn't happening right now. We see lots of shows taking themselves to streaming platforms.
Yeah.
Which did you see Hamilton on Disney Plus?
Not streamed, but I knew there was a whole hullabaloo about it.
Yeah, I mean, what it has clarified to me is that you can't. I don't know, like it's not a replacement. It's kind of like a consolation prize. It's like here's what'll kind of get you through if you want your theater kick, and you can turn to streaming, but it's not like that's going to replace theater. It to me it just can't. So I don't know. There was some worry that theater wouldn't come back, or if it did, it would like be completely diminished. But if anything, for me, it's clarified that how special theater is. Getting people in a room together and sharing a collective experience is special, especially coming from the show that I was doing, where there are actors like through like these coming through the audience, and there was action all over the room. People, I mean, like that's what people are craving. So we'll come back to that, but I'm not saying that streaming isn't valuable. Streaming is fantastic, and I think like we're clarifying like in what ways streaming is special. I see local theater companies all over try and bring their platform to streaming. And when theater comes back, I don't think they should give up on that. I think that we might see local theaters, instead of turning into theater companies, they might turn into content companies. Because streaming is a great, like if you keep investing in that, it's a great way for people to have accessibility to what they're trying to do. Get more people into the door, and more younger people are engaging with theater that way currently. I think that would be fantastic. I think that's a good idea if we continue that. It helps. It'll help keep us relevant.
I think so too. And accessibility is the big one, right? Like we're sort of in this moment where the issue of New York theater being like so inaccessible and kind of in a bubble doesn't necessarily have to be like that anymore, especially with this streaming virtual world that everyone's now familiar with. So I'm hopeful, but you're
Same.
right, that theater, you can't replace it.
But we've learned some things from streaming that we could carry over into the theater industry, and people love the accessibility of streaming. And I think we need to make it's an opportunity for when we come back to find a way to make theater more accessible for people. Try to get, especially young people. That means creating works that, and I think we're going to see a high influx of like new shows and exciting content that will have a voice and will be performed. And I hope that it can be more affordable to people. And we just got to do a really good job of convincing people, potential audience members, of theater's value.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. And that, my friend, brings us to the end of our interview. We did it.
Wow, we did it. I'm so proud of myself.
For those watching, thank you for tuning in. We had so many lovely people in the comments. I just want to shout out a few of them. My sister and my producer extraordinaire, thank you for commenting. She remembers you from Shepherd of the Valley.
Yes, shout out to Shepherd of the Valley.
Shout out to Shepherd of the Valley. Wouldn't be here without Shepherd of the Valley. Nadine, happy Friday. Thanks for tuning in. My mom, she says, nice to see you. Nice to see you too, Mom. Love you. Zane, thanks for tuning in. We have Emily Sailor.
Hey!
Thanks for tuning in. Fill the well. Yes. Did I say that right? It's Emily Sailor, right, John?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, so. Emily, I didn't mean to pronounce your name wrong. Anyway, thank you for tuning in, everyone. If you want to connect with John on Instagram, his handle is here _JonathanQ. And that concludes our show. Thanks again for joining me, John. It was a pleasure and an honor to reconnect with you and have our chat tonight.
I've loved it.
Me too. All right. Take care. All right. That's another episode of Avenue A, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending part of your Friday evening with us. It's always a joy to be able to sit down and chat with artists that I know and love, and artists that I'm meeting for the first time, and everyone in between. So thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Avenue A.